Steven, is it Z space 6 space 2 or Z62? Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a preview of the Nikon Z space 6.2 and the Z space 7.2 from Nikon. Now, we checked with them and they said it's Z, then the space, then the number, then the 2. Okay, no space between the number and the 2. And it's also not the number 2, it's Roman numeral 2, and it's also not an S. But should it be an S? So what we're gonna do in this video is start with the Z6.2, I'm not even saying the space, the Z6.2 specs, and then we'll get to the Z7.2 specs, starting with the same 24.5 megapixel sensor. Now it basically has the same body, the same shape, the same exact feel. It's basically the same exact thing, except it now has dual card slots. Wait, hold it, Steven, can we get a clap? Yeah, I mean, who thought that a camera in this generation, in this day and age, should have 2 card slots maybe 2 years ago? I don't know. But anyway, we have CF Express B and UHS-2 SD. Personally, would have rather have seen 2 CF Express Type B slots in there because I like having dual slots that are exactly the same. The R6 from Canon has 2 SD. The R5 has it split just like this, just like the Nikon, but it's fine. I rather have 2 card slots that are different than 1 card slot that is just 1 card slot. Now, if we think back to when Nikon put out the Z6 and Z7, they made the argument that the CF Express cards are so good and don't fail that you don't need more than 1 card slot. That's just utter stupidity. You want redundancy just in case. Now, Nikon's reasoning for this is they said that they listened. So during our call, they're like, yeah, Nikon listened to what the photographers wanted. Like, did we really need to tell you that we wanted dual card slots and a bunch of other stuff? No, I just think that is a terrible excuse. You now have dual Expeed 6 processors inside of this camera that they say will give you more power, more speed, more buffer space. Whereas Canon with the R6 and the R5 is putting in the same processor as the 1DX Mark III. They were able to shrink it down. Instead of having it be dual, they put in a single, much better processor into their cameras, and Nikon just put in 2 of an older processor that in a couple years is going to be even more out of date than it currently is. But the big question is, will you have better AF performance because of 2 processors? That's to be determined. We will see. Now, we should. Maybe the overlay will move faster, but will the autofocus get better? Because it's still the same 273 autofocusing points. They didn't change the autofocusing system. In terms of the buffer, you have 3.5 times more buffer capacity with the CF Express card. When you are shooting 12-bit, you will get 124 frames versus 37, but most of the time you're going to be shooting with the 14-bit, which is the higher quality. We don't have an exact number on how many frames you'll get. You probably won't outrun the buffer because you're not going to hold it down for 18 minutes and get, 10 million pictures out of it. Speaking of buffer capacity, you can now shoot at 14 frames per second in 12-bit with a single focusing point. So it's kind of worthless to get 14 frames per second at 12-bit with a single focusing point. We don't even know where it dumbs down when you're shooting 14-bit RAW. Will it dumb down to 9? Will it be 10? Will it be 11? Will it be 12? We'll have to get the camera to test it out. I still rather shoot at the 14-bit, but just 1 single focusing point in 14 frames a second, that's not really a big deal. Now, if you had trouble focusing in low light before with the Z6, they made this one 50% better, so you should be able to focus in lower, darker situations, because it was actually a problem when you didn't have a lot of light with the Z6. It would just hunt and you couldn't get the focus. IAF is now available in video mode. How will it be? I don't know. Will those dual processors make it any better? We will have to wait and see when we try it out. The same thing, you have the same IBIS, the same screen, the same EVF. They didn't up the EVF, they didn't put in a flip out rotatable screen, which I personally still don't give a shit about. I like the flippy down screen. I prefer to have that because it helps me keep my line straight. Now, there is less blackout between shots because, yeah, there was a lot of blackout between pictures with the Z6. It wasn't a detriment to when I was shooting, but it is much nicer that if you can have less blackout, so hopefully they did give you that. Now, it will do 4K 60. not right off the bat when it comes to video. That will be via a firmware update in 2021, but they will not be letting you do 4K at 120. There's not a lot of major changes here when it comes to video, but if you're somebody who's used to using other cameras and you want to manually focus, you can now reverse the focus ring. So if you're used to rotating it that way, you can reverse it, or if you're used to going that way, that's not a big deal. You figure it out real quick once you pick up this camera. Now, something they did put in that is much better is USB-C charging while the camera is on. Before, you could just charge it when the camera was off, but you couldn't use it. Now you can use it while charging, so you don't actually lose that functionality. Let me jump in here real quick to show you how I can process this one image in Lightroom using a couple of presets from FroPack 2. So this is straight out of the camera raw. With one click, this is what AC/DC looks like. Really good starting point. Then we got Apollo with no white balance. Gives it that blue look, but uses my white balance, looks good. Caribbean Creamsicle is really sweet looking. Dorothy is another cool one. That one looks good. As well as Matte Black High Contrast. So you can see that's just running through 4 different presets, and they give me a great starting point. So it also helps you speed up your raw workflow. If you want to check out all the presets, head on over to FroKnowsPhoto.com/FroPack2. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters. And if you decide to pick it up right now, it is on sale. Or if you want to pick up FroPack 1 and FroPack 2 together as the FroPack bundle, you can save even more. Now, let's get back to the video. Steven, can we get a slow clap to build to this one? Woo! Yeah, guess what? They are adding a fully functioning vertical grip and battery pack. That's right, it is going to be called, Steven?
The MB-111.
No! It's the Pen 1.5. It will forever be known as the Pen 1.5. It's the MB-111, whatever. It's called the Pen 1.5 grip. Something pretty cool about it is it is hot swappable while you're actually shooting. When one of the batteries goes down, you can actually pop it out, pop another one in, and it will still continue doing what you need to do. Is that a selling point? No, not really, unless you're somebody who lets the camera roll forever while you're out there doing long exposures or stuff like that, but whatever. Fully functioning grip, we got it. Firmware updating will be available via SnapBridge. So no longer will you have to put a card in the computer and a card reader and then go ahead and put it in the camera to update the firmware. You can do that via SnapBridge, which is a pretty big deal, and it will be available come November at a price point of $1999.95. That's a really good price because it's the same price as what the Z6 came out at originally, which means that Z6 that you are holding right now, if you have one, is going to really tank in used value price over time. And we would think that the new Z6 is going to drop by at least, I will have to say, $300. So it should be around $1,700, which then makes you think that should I buy a Z5 if I want a Z6? Like, at that point, the Z5 is overpriced. We'll get to more of that in just a minute. The grip is $399 and is totally worth it if you do portraits, if you want the extra battery in there, if you just want it to feel better in your hands, more like a bigger feeling camera, then you go ahead and you want to add the grip. The biggest question here is, why is it not an S? Should it be an S? Did they improve enough in this camera to make it go from a first generation to a 2, which they went with like when the 5D Mark II to 5D Mark III to the 5D Mark IV? Those are major changes. This isn't a major change. What they did to this is they took the things that they should have put in there in the first place and they finally put it in there, but 2 years after the fact. Will this be a better camera? The answer is, it's going to be slightly better because of the grip, because of the dual card slots, but will the autofocus be better? We can't tell you that right now because we don't have one in our hands, but when we do get one, we will take it out, we will test it, because that autofocus needs to improve. If it does not improve by leaps and bounds, then Nikon is in even more trouble. Now onto the Z7, which has been totally reinvented. Said no one. So basically, it's the same body. It's going to be called the Z Space 7 II. That is official, and it's II, not 72, Steven. Do not be confused. It's II. Same 45.7 megapixel sensor, same body, same feel, same tweaks, same card slots in the Z Space 6 II you will now find in the Z Space 7 II. I almost said 6 II, but whatever, you get it. Most of the same updates that you saw in the 6 II are going to be here in the 7 II as well. It will have the same dual Expeed 6 processors. If you want more buffer capacity, you now have 3.3x more buffer capacity with CF Express cards when you're using them. Now, shooting 12-bit RAW, you will get 50 frames. I almost said per second, but you will get 50 frames in that buffer versus 23. Now, this is a Z7. The files off of the Z7 are some of the nicest colored, awesome files that you will find across any of the cameras on the market. Why you would dumb it down to get more shots and shoot 12-bit is beyond me, unless you really, really need multiple frames per second faster. Then I would just shoot with the 14-bit RAW file, because those files are absolutely incredible. The ISO hasn't changed, the focusing system hasn't changed. You still have 493 focusing points. You can now shoot up to 10 frames per second versus 9, but the question is that big of a deal? Because with the R5 and the R6 out on the market, let's talk about the R5. That's a 45 megapixel camera that is cranking through RAW files because it has a better processor, the same processor from the 1DX Mark III. But I guess I'll save most of that for a comparison video, but I just thought it was important to say that, you know, Canon is ahead of the game where Nikon is, because Nikon is now 2 years behind because they just updated a camera from 2 years ago, basically 2 years ago, with the same technology, just some minor tweaks. Better low light focusing, just like they updated in the 6 II. Now, you will have IF focus for video, just like with the 6 II as well. 4K 60, but with a slight crop for internal recording. USB powered. It takes the Pen 1.5 grip. Firmware upgrade is going to be exactly the same over SnapBridge, which is a nice addition. We wish that Sony did something like that, right, Steven? Because Sony's is the worst to upgrade firmware. You have to plug the camera into the freaking computer. You have to verify some stuff, and it's a pain in the ass. I just wish I could do that. I wish they even let us do it right to the card. Then it would be much better. So when is this one going to be available? It's going to be available in December. This one is going to be priced at $2999.95, which means that the Z7 price should ultimately drop, because this is cheaper than where the Z7 was initially announced at, which I think was $3299 when that camera first came out. Let me cut in here real quick to let you know that I have 3 new designer shirts at store.FroKnowsPhoto.com, including this Canadian one, or this vintage film version. And finally, the new I Shoot Raw He-Man edition. Head on over to store.FroKnowsPhoto.com and use the code ZSpace62 to get 11% off right now. Will it have better AF performance? That is the major question here, because if it doesn't, if Nikon didn't get that right in this camera, it's going to be another 2 years till we get a replacement to what they did. Will there be firmware updates to make the autofocus better? Will the dual Expeed 6 processors be fast enough to do something to make this camera any closer to the R6, to the R5, and to whatever Sony is doing across the board? Because if they don't get this right, then this is a major problem, because then we're waiting for a Z8, then we're waiting for a Z9 to hope that they get it right. And I know the Nikon lovers out there, I'm a Nikon lover, but the people are going to be like, Jared, you're so harsh on Nikon, but it's true. Until you pick up an R5, an R6, or any of the Sonys and use their autofocus system, you will not realize how far behind Nikon is in this game. If you're doing landscapes, then the autofocus system doesn't matter, but landscapes with these cameras are fantastic because I love the files that come off of that sensor. So if you have a Z6 or a Z7 right now, should you upgrade to this camera? If you're a landscape shooter, like I said, the answer is probably no. If you need dual card slots because you're a wedding shooter and you want that redundancy just in case anything happens, then yeah, it is a possibility to do that. I would recommend dumping your Z6 or Z7 as soon as possible if you can, to get the most value out of it, because if the price drops of the Z6 and Z7 by a couple $100, then you got to take even more, a couple $100 off your used one, and you're looking at like $1,000 that you're selling it for. In the last 2 years, if you got it, you're losing quite a bit of money at that point if you decide to go that route. The big deals here, the vertical grip, the 2 card slots. Will the autofocus be better? We'll have to wait and see. What do you guys think? Please let me know down below. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.